Welcome to the latest edition of the Hudson County Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Haig, and with me today is a very special guest. But before we start today's podcast, just a reminder that the Hudson County Sports Podcast is brought to you on a weekly basis by Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. The telephone number is 201-798-4466. And say hello to Danny and the boys at Stan Sports Center in Hoboken. And my special guest today is somebody who was born and raised in Bayonne, may very well be the best basketball player to ever come out of Bayonne High School, at least the one who had the greatest career. But he went from Bayonne, growing up in Bayonne, went to Bayonne High, then had a career at Fordham, and then went on to play professional basketball where he had stints with both the Detroit Pistons and the New Jersey Nets in the NBA. And then also played basketball overseas. And it's my friend Danny O'Sullivan. Danny, how are you today?
Jim, I'm doing great. Thank you for that kind introduction. There are a lot of great basketball players that have come out of Bayonne, and I'm certainly not near the top of that list. I can think of a handful off the top of my head. Bill Beccarella, Bobby Arnold, Adrian Goodson.
You're being very, very modest in that respect.
Well, we've been blessed with some very good players coming out of Bayonne over the years. So
that's correct. That's correct. And if Adrian Goodson is listening to this, please, you got your moment in the sun is here. Oh my God, was she fantastic! But I always told her she could be a guest on this podcast. I'd stop everything. As a matter of fact, I'd have to hang up on you if I knew that Adrian Goodson was calling in.
So what's so interesting about Adrian, we were in high school at the same time. She's maybe a year older, but we were inducted into the Bayonne High School Hall of Fame the same day.
Wow!
Just a couple of years ago, and I got to spend some time with her. She's just a great person. I really admire her a great deal.
I loved watching her play as well, and every time I keep saying, everybody, as soon as they found out that I'm doing this podcast, and immediately the first person that everybody says, "Have you done Adrian Goodson yet?" And I said, "Well, I can't make the phone call, but I've been trying." So, Adrian, if you're listening, it's yours. The sky's the limit. Whenever you want to check in and call, it's all yours. So. All right. Anyway, let's go. Let's throw the clock back a good 50 years. And where was it that you were born and obviously in Bayonne? But what part of Bayonne were you born and raised in?
Well, actually, I was born in the Bronx, New York.
Oh, you were? Oh, see, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah, we moved to Bayonne when I was starting 6th grade, and I had not played. I grew up. We went to Tallentine Church. We went to Tallentine Grammar School.
Wow.
It's a
Powerhouse.
Basketball school. But I never went to the high school there. I ended up coming to Bayonne. I had never played organized basketball up until then.
Never once. Never played like CYO in the Bronx. No.
Never once. We just played in the. We were more like just playing in the street. But I played. Then I played at CYO at St. Mary's.
Star to see?
Yeah, Star to see. 3 years, and then I moved on to the high school, and I was not very good. I was not a very good basketball player.
No, that's the rumor has it that you weren't very good. But there was one thing that stuck out in everybody's mind is that already by the time you were a freshman in high school, how tall were you?
I was growing, and I think that was part of my problem. I was just growing so fast. I was probably 6 feet in the 8th grade, but then by the end of freshman year, I was probably 6'5".
Wow.
An interesting story.
Now let me ask you. Did you, just like me, because I went from being 5'6" as a freshman in high school, 5'8" as a sophomore in high school, to 6'5" as a junior. And the thing I tell people is that everybody asks about growing pains, and my legs used to hurt badly because and doctors used to pan it off as being because I was growing so fast. Did you have a similar type thing where your legs hurt? No.
No.
Okay.
It was pretty healthy that way.
Good.
All right. But it took me a while. I was going to say my freshman year, I wasn't even basketball was not even on my radar in freshman year. even though I had played in 8th grade, and I was walking in the hall, and it was the day you went to get your health forms, and Tom Jacobson, who looked at me in the hallway, he said, "Hey, O'Sullivan, there's a basketball meeting after school. Get your butt down there." And then I went down. I got my forms and filled them out. And then I tried out freshman year of high school. And Jake was the JV coach.
Right.
Tim Mercier.
Tim Mercier was the freshman coach, right?
Tim Mercier was the freshman coach. And Tim was a great player in his own right.
Absolutely.
Georgetown player. So after school, or heading to practice one day, Jake says to Tim, "Hey, how's Danny doing?" And Tim says, "He sucks. I'm going to cut him today." And Jake looks at Tim and says, "You're not cutting Danny O'Sullivan." Now, Jake and I, we went to the same parish. So every Sunday at Mass, Jake would see me at church, and he knew my mother. So Jake just always looked out for me. And, he just had my back all the time.
That's
so
great.
If things had turned out differently, I definitely would have gotten cut from that.
Wow, and then who knows what your life would have been at that point.
Right.
All right, so when you first moved from the Bronx to Bayonne, okay, was it difficult to fit in with new friends, and did sports help you make friends in your new neighborhood? And what street did you live on? What street did you live on?
We moved to Sisson Court, which is just off 15th Street.
Okay.
Right down by Avenue E. But yeah, there were tons of kids in the neighborhood. We played. Yeah, sports was the gateway, right? To your friend base. We played everything. We played wiffle ball. We played hardball, baseball. We played basketball. We played street hockey. We played football on the street. Whatever was in season, we were playing.
Okay.
It didn't matter, and we played all day. Nobody went to camps or, it wasn't that kind of time. We were just out all day playing sports, whatever we could dream up.
All right, and how many kids were there in your immediate neighborhood? Were there a lot of kids that you were able to play all day long, or did you?
Yeah, it was a broad, it was a broad age range too. So you had like kids 2 or 3 years older, a couple of kids younger. So there were probably a good dozen kids that we could always get a 5-on-5 going, or a 6-on, whatever, football or whatever we needed. There were enough kids to play.
Oh, that's good. All right, so now you're a freshman at Bayonne High, and Mercier is on the verge of cutting you from the freshman team, which might have ended your athletic career right then and there. Okay.
Yeah.
And Jake and Mercier are great friends. So I mean,
yes.
Maybe do you think that helped a little bit that you had Jake in your corner?
Of course, Jake. Nothing. My life would be. I don't know what it would be without Jake. Jake just, he always looked out for me. He was always in my corner. He wanted what was best for me. He was just he just took a special liking to me, and I'm indebted to him for it. You have these mentors in your life at times. They come along. They're not with you forever, but they just get you going. They just keep the light burning. So, I'm indebted to Jake, to this day. Jake's just one of those guys. He's a basketball junkie.
Absolutely.
And he loves the game. He would invite me to play because he was playing at night at Bayonne High School with his buddies.
Right.
And he would invite me in, to rough me up and just say, "Hey, you gotta get going here. Come on, you gotta exert yourself in this game. This is no joke out here." So Jake really did show me the way.
Okay. And you say that these are people that are in your life for the period of time or whatever. Jake is the kind of guy that if he's in your corner and he's your friend, he's there for life. Like I might go a year or two without seeing him, and then the next minute, boom. Hey Jimmy, guess what? You know what I wanted to tell you? I had this article about so and so, blah 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 blah. And it's like nothing ever passed.
I can call Jake up right now if he's picking up the phone.
Right.
No doubt.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you just reminded me. I think I owe him a phone call. I think after we're done talking, I think I'm going to give him a call. So,
yeah.
All right. So you played on the freshman team for Merce because Jake wouldn't cut you. How bad of a player were you?
That freshman team. What's really funny is we went 21-0 and we won the county. And I played. There was a lot of garbage time to play because we blew everybody out that year.
Wow.
So I played. I didn't play much, but the last 4 minutes a game sometimes.
All right, Danny. Who else was on that? Who else was on that freshman team with you that we might know?
Yeah, Daryl Frazier, Lance Taylor, Bobby Arnold, who ended up passing Phil Baccarella as the all-time men's or boys' leading scorer.
Right.
Because he ended up playing 3 years of varsity. Gosh, who else was on the team? Donald King.
Okay.
It was
a lot of talent, and those guys, the three of the ones you mentioned, they were already men by the time you were a freshman in high school, and you were still maturing, so it was a little difficult for you to do.
And Tim was just a great teacher.
Yes.
So, he just, those guys, look, I was blessed in Bayonne. Those guys are basketball junkies. They were watching the game. They were seeing what was going on. They knew how to teach it. They were fantastic.
Right. All right, and at that time as a freshman, how tall were you? Probably around 6 foot, 6'1"?
I was going 6 feet to 6'5" overnight.
Wow.
Just very quickly.
Well, then once you turned 6'5", there's no way in the world that anybody in Bayonne was going to let coach. Then was Arnie Levin still the head coach?
Arnie was the coach.
Well, he wasn't letting you go if you were 6'5". You were going to be a work in progress no matter what, right?
I would think so at that point. Because then I played JV for Jake, and Jake just he made time for me. He found minutes for me to play, and it still took a while. It was not an easy progression for me.
Okay.
You're growing so fast, and I was so skinny. I was not very strong. Everything was it was just a difficult game for me. But I never got discouraged. I stayed with it. And I'm happy I did.
Okay. What was I going to say? At that point, was there any other sport that was involved? Did you play? Did you try to play football or baseball or anything,
no,
just strictly basketball?
Football was interesting because I was tall, and I remember a coach coming up to me and asked me if I wanted to play, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? I will get killed out there." I was never, because I was starting. That's when I was starting to go to the weight room after school.
Okay.
To try to get stronger. I couldn't put any weight on the bar. I couldn't lift the bar. These guys in the weight room were, like 45-pound plates on both sides, and I'm like, oh my god, like I am out of my league here. These guys they were so strong. I was like, no way I'm going out on that field with these guys. Okay. No way.
Was running part of your life then, or was that something that became later on in life? Did you try to run it all as a freshman or a sophomore in high school?
I did not.
Wow.
I did not. And you know what's so, I look back, and even like my brother, because my sister was a star at St. Dominic Academy.
Right.
On the track team. She ran, indoors, she ran cross country, she ran outdoors. She was a fantastic runner.
And then she ended up running marathons too, so
Yeah, I probably would have been a pretty decent runner. Yeah, I've run 4 marathons, since I finished playing basketball.
Well, who's a better runner, you or Julie?
Oh, Julie was fantastic.
I agree.
Nobody faster than Julie.
Nobody. No.
Nobody was faster than Julie.
All right. So now, sophomore year in high school, did you notice that you were getting better in basketball, or really not?
Honestly, no. Jim, I played. It's so interesting because nowadays, I see it. With kids, if they're not good at something, they just move on.
Right.
There's no sticking to anything. There's no room for late bloomers. I don't know where I would be in today's game, but I played JV as a junior.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah. That's when I really started to figure it. Like the game was slowed enough down for me. I was a junior playing against sophomores predominantly, right?
Okay.
And the game was just slowed enough down for me. We had a really good team.
And then how tall were you then as a junior in high school?
I was probably 6'8".
Okay.
But I was probably like 165 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, I was really slight. I was just, but I was always a good athlete. I could always get up and down the floor.
Yep.
I was very fast. But yeah, that's when it was like, okay, I get it now. I'm starting to get it. But still, as a if I counted up my varsity points, if I scored 150 points as a varsity player in high school, that would be about it.
Is that it? Really? Even as a senior too?
I would say so. I can't imagine I scored much more than that.
Wow.
Because I didn't play that much. The turning point for everything.
Well, as a senior, who was on the team with you that was better than playing more than you?
Well, it was Bobby Arnold. He was the main man.
Okay, he was the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But the turning point was we were playing Marist. They had Kirk Eady.
Yep.
And Sykes Dunbar.
Okay. Hello.
And we were at Bayonne High School. The gym was packed, and I was just it was a great atmosphere to be in. I didn't expect to play, and I guess we must have had foul trouble, and I got put in the game. And I must have played out of my mind for a few minutes, probably like 5 minutes. I played out of my mind. Got a couple of baskets, a lot of rebounds against those guys. And there were some people in the stands that night, and especially, you remember the FA?
Of course.
Ed Ford?
Yep.
Yeah. So Ed Ford writes a big article the next day in the paper about my performance. And then that's when, all of a sudden, Fordham started showing up to games to watch me. Fairfield started showing up to games to watch me, and Holy Cross, and then it was just, I've had so many of those moments where it's the right place at the right time.
Okay.
Not enough of those moments where consistently having great years, but sometimes it's just the right place at the right time.
So we're going to base the precipice of your athletic career was based upon an article that was written by the FA.
It was part of it.
Wow.
Part of it, yeah. There are a lot of people involved. Jake, was one of my biggest cheerleaders always. But yeah, that article was huge. I don't know why it was, but it just drew attention to me.
Okay.
Because at that point, I'm 6'9".
Yep.
And I'm getting bigger, getting stronger. And I was a good athlete. That was the one thing. If you came and saw me play, you'd see me running up and down the floor, and you'd be like, okay. And then, coaches just use their imagination and say, there's not a lot of these 6'9" guys that can run up and down like this.
Right.
Let me have a look. So it ended up working out in my favor.
All right. Now, I vividly remember St. Peter's College being somewhat interested in you your senior year. But you're telling me no, they weren't. They really didn't show that much interest.
I never heard that. They were always a very strong program.
Right.
Because I remember as a freshman playing against them, and I was like, oh my goodness, these guys, I've got a lot of work to do to catch up to these guys. They were big, strong. They were just well coached. They always put a good product on the floor. Okay.
All right. So then you're now a senior at Bayonne. How good was your team with Bobby Arnold in that senior year? Was that a good team?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, I don't remember that we didn't win anything.
Okay.
So, but at that point, I was already. I guess I was committed. Not until after the season. Probably by the spring, I committed to Fordham.
Oh, okay. And what was it about Fordham that you liked, Danny, that made you...
Well, I grew up in the Bronx.
Okay.
And those guys, they just showed up. In those days, there were not a lot of restrictions on how many times a coach could go watch a kid play.
Right.
And I never saw the coach. I just knew he was there.
And was it Bob Hill was the coach at Fordham then, or no?
No, it was Penders was the coach.
Oh, Tom Penders was. Okay.
Yeah, but his assistant, this guy named Buddy Marr, and Buddy was a former head coach of the women's team at Columbia University.
Okay.
And Buddy had a way. He was like he taught me how to play basketball. That's when I made leaps and bounds. After senior year of high school, that whole summer, we worked a couple of times a week. He just showed me how to play basketball.
Okay.
And
Did you go to Fordham on a daily basis to go work out,
He
or
would drive to Bayonne.
Wow.
Coming into Bayonne. Yeah. He was so set on me becoming a great player.
Okay.
And I remember when they were at my house for a visit, and we were talking about, they're selling you on the school, and he said, listen, we're going to go to Hawaii, we're going to play St. John's, and I was like, wow, we're playing St. John's, and Walter Berry's on that team. He goes, Danny, and he wasn't, I'm not saying he was right, he was wrong. Walter Berry was a great player, but he just looked me dead in the eye. He goes, Danny, you're going to be better than Walter Berry.
Wow.
Like, that's the kind of belief that this guy was like, no, Danny, you don't get it. You're going to be great.
Okay.
And, I didn't become what he thought, but the confidence that people had in me, it took me a while to really buy in that I could be a pretty good player. But he was the one that was really like, no, Danny, you're not. You're gonna help us. You're gonna help us win games.
Okay.
So,
but
it was
the twist of fate was that Penders was the head coach at Fordham, but then before you even get there, Penders gets on a plane, goes to Texas, never comes back, and they hire Nick McCarchick from Canisius. And did you?
So never played for Tom.
Never played for Penders, right? And what happened to Buddy?
Tom ended up leaving on the eve of the first practice. He actually went to Rhode Island. He had to stop off.
Rhode Island first. That's right. You're right.
So we had an assistant take over as an interim. The guy who was one of the main recruiters for me, Buddy Marr, he ended up getting fired. So it was a whole house cleaning. So my people were gone, which was okay. But the other thing that was funny about the whole thing was I remember signing my letter of intent to go to Fordham, and Arnie Levan was there for the photo op. We were at City Hall in the mayor's office, and Arnie looked at me. He goes, Danny, study hard because you're never going to play in the NBA.
Is that what he said to you?
He said that. Yeah.
Why in the world would your high school coach say that to you?
He ended up denying it years later, but he said it, and I wasn't going to dispute it. And when I went to Fordham and those coaches left, when Penders left, I was like, I'm not here for Tom. I'm here for me. I'm here for an education.
Right.
And so it wasn't, as much as it was upsetting, I was still kind of like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not chasing, not going to another school. This is where I'm meant to be.
Okay.
And it definitely hurt me in the short term because that whole freshman year, I barely played, and I was ready. I was ready to play. That's the one thing that's so interesting when I think back to my life. My senior year of high school, I was just struggling mess on the floor. But by the time freshman year of college came, I was ready to play in a Division I college game.
Okay.
There was no doubt in my mind. I had that much confidence. I had been built up that much by the positive reinforcement had built me up to a place. Now, I sat on that bench that whole year, but I knew I could have helped that team. And we weren't very good. But we had 5 seniors. There was loyalty,
All right, but wasn't there also between your freshman year, your senior year of high school, freshman year of college, you did an incredible amount of work lifting weights and getting that much stronger where you became,
for sure. It definitely, when they make a commitment to you, you make a commitment right back to them. So
okay.
Yes, the work definitely increased. And it's not it's so funny. It's not hours and hours of it. It's literally like an hour a day of just intense hard work. And it made such a difference and confidence and, just skill and, just letting your athletic ability kind of take over. But, it came from coaching. It didn't really come from me. It came from coaching. These guys, they just know what they're doing.
Right. And didn't also, too, that summer was the first time that you went to go play down in the Jersey Shore League, and that gave you a little confidence, too, that you're saying, wow, I could play with guys that are at big-time college and in the NBA, and there you were, you were playing?
I I definitely played at the Jersey Shore Summer League, but I don't think it was that summer. I played, I was going, in that year, I was probably going to Dyckman Street Playground.
Okay.
And I was playing for this guy. His name is Jim Couch. He was like this, kind of like a guru. He had like guys would come and he would form teams and leagues and everything. His son was a very good player. Sean was a very good player at Columbia. But yeah, I was taking the 99S bus to Port Authority, the 1 train all the way to Dyckman, and playing at that playground all day every Sunday.
Wow.
The summer, and that was good too because you're in another town. You're playing against different players. You're expanding your world so you can find the best players around. So,
right. You must have stuck out like a sore thumb though there at the Dyckman Street Playground though, right? Were you like the White Shadow?
It was an intimidating place because I'll tell you, they had a guy with a big speaker and a microphone, and boy, if you got your shot blocked or somebody dunked on you,
he was making fun of you the whole time.
He was razzing you the whole day.
Right.
And so you had to come ready to play. It was a very intense atmosphere. There's reps and everything, so it was like organized leagues. But boy, you had to come ready to play because those guys, they played hard, and this guy on the microphone was relentless.
Yeah. But weren't you like the White Shadow? Were there any other white guys in that Dyckman Street League?
No, I don't ever remember feeling at a place like that. One of the things, basketball, you're just there for a common goal, just to win games. None of that really bothered me.
Okay.
Came in my thought process.
All right. So when was it that you started to play regularly at the Jersey Shore League, where you started to play well?
Probably after my sophomore year, I played at the Jersey Shore League.
Okay.
And I forget what team, because there were a couple of guys from Fordham that were playing.
Yep.
Joe Paterno was playing.
Parada.
Parada for sure.
Right.
Probably Mark Taylor was playing.
Mark Taylor, probably the kid from Randolph. I can't think of his name right now. McIntosh, is that his name?
Tony. Yeah, I never played with Tony.
Oh, okay.
He's a fantastic player.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Jersey Shore League. But really, I was more.
More Dyckman Street, huh? Yeah.
When I was at Fordham, I was always taking summer classes, so I stayed on campus all the time. So I was just going downtown.
Okay.
I used to go to Brandeis High School. We would play in summer leagues on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, all over the city, whatever playground. There was an organized league, so they just send you. This is before email. They give you a printout of the schedule and they say, here's where we're going.
Yep.
And you just show up and play, and it was just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball it is the greatest game. It's given me so much, and it's just so much fun.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now Penders leaves, you get the interim coach leaves, and you get Nick McCarchick. And did you hit it off with McCarchick right away? Because he probably looked at you as being his gravy train. So did you?
I don't know if we hit. I wouldn't say he was just his first year. He needed to lay down the law.
Yep.
We were an undisciplined bunch of guys.
And you weren't very good either.
We were just undisciplined.
Yeah.
We weren't. When you have an interim coach, it was. It was a little loose. And Nick came in and just laid down the law. So he wasn't looking to make friends with anybody. He was looking to win games and set the tone and instill his culture in how a team should be. And that's tough and hardworking. Nick, and the other thing about Nick is he's just such a good human being. He's he's a straight arrow. He tells you the truth. He's tough but fair. And so, did he like me? Yeah. As a player, I think he probably did. He was probably really frustrated with me too. When I look back on my career at Fordham, I probably could have done more to win more games for him, for sure. We can all look back at missed shots and missed opportunities, and the ball just doesn't bounce your way. So but there's always those.
Right.
There's always those things.
All right, but then your game flourished when McCarthy became a head coach because you just gradually kept improving and improving.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But, I was with a good bunch of guys. Again,
And you also grew into your body tremendous. Like you were no longer awkward. Boy, oh boy, did you have a nice shooting touch from say 8 to 12 feet, and get the ball at the block, turn around, bang. I mean, you really developed it and worked hard on your game to get better.
Yes, for sure. I mean, there's no substitute for it. But the other thing is, again, I was okay. I was doing fine. But we played, I want to say it was my sophomore year. We were playing, I don't think it was my junior year. I think it was my sophomore year. We were playing Marquette in the Garden, and we were part of a doubleheader. So we probably played the 7 o'clock game, and after us, it was going to be Marist versus Florida. And it was Tito Horford against Rick Smith.
Wow, okay.
In the headline game. So there were a lot of scouts coming to watch those two go at each other. And I ended up having 26 points against Marquette. I had a great game, and we beat them.
You beat Marquette, and you beat Marquette, and I'm talking to you right now? What the hell is that all about? I'm going to hang up the phone.
And
because that's where I went, right?
I did not know that.
We
beat Marquette in the Garden. I had a nice game afterwards.
Was Duquette the head coach of Marquette then?
I think he was.
Yeah, see, there's a reason why. Okay, go ahead.
And the headline of the night was not those two playing because it ended up being kind of a stinker game, Marist versus Florida. I ended up like sneaking through, and everybody was like, "Oh, who's this guy?"
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of got on the radar of NBA scouts as a sophomore, and ended up playing my better games at the very right time.
Yep. Well, and that was probably the best time of all. So you did the right thing. So, all right, we're going to continue to talk more with Danny O'Sullivan about his career at Fordham in 1 second. After this word from Stan Sports Center. Stan Sports Center is your local full-service sporting goods vendor and authorized team dealer. They offer quality products and dozens of brands to outfit your team top to bottom. Stan's has been proudly supporting the local community since 1946, and it is your one-stop shop for uniforms, equipment, online team stores, and much more. Locations in Hoboken and Saddlebrook, and servicing the entire tri-state area. Visit them on the web at stansportsctr.com and check them out on social media for their latest creations. That's Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. Telephone number 201-798-4466. And tell people that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast with Danny O'Sullivan, of course, and tell them that you listen to the Sports Podcast, and tell that it's very easy to remember. Danny O'Sullivan, Danny DiCagilio. There's two Dannys. You could just bring that down to Stan's, and they'll take care of you. So, all right, we're going back now with Danny O'Sullivan talking about his basketball career. Did you get a sense, Danny? Now you're talking about going into your junior year at Fordham. Did you get a sense that maybe you could take this to the next level at that point?
At that point, yes.
Okay.
I did, but it was still, I had it was a tough, it was a tough year. We had a down year when I was a junior. We played a tough schedule, so I had my butt handed to me a few times. I remember playing against Jason Williams from St. John's, Dwayne Shinsis from Florida, and I was kind of thinking to myself, holy crap, these guys, those guys were really good, and I was kind of thinking to myself, how am I going to get myself over the hump to bring myself to the next level? So there was always, I was optimistic that I could, but, I still had a lot of work to do. Okay.
All right, so now your junior and senior year at Fordham, you do really well. Correct me if I'm wrong, you made all MAC as a senior, or were you already in the Patriot League at that point? No, you're still in the MAC, right?
We were in the MAC. I don't know what my status was as far as that goes. I really wasn't, ever focused on individual goals, but my senior year, we were voted the metropolitan area team of the year, and that included St. John's and Seton Hall. We won 20 games, we lost 12, we played in the NIT, we lost to Rutgers at the RAC.
Oh wow!
I think it was a close game, but that was a tough loss because I thought we were better than Rutgers. But that's a tough place to play. That was a pretty good gym that night.
Yep.
They had a nice crowd. And they were decent. I thought we were the better team, but, they beat us. So
okay.
That was that.
All right. After your senior year, did you have any agents contact you to say, guess what, sign on with me and we'll make sure, and we'll put the word in to see if you can get drafted? Did you have any idea that you were going to get drafted?
I was already on the radar of the NBA because they have the post-season camps. So
right.
In those days, it was Portsmouth.
And then they also used to have the big man camp too, right? Wasn't it one camp that it was just strictly for?
Newell had a big man's camp.
Right.
I didn't go to that.
Oh, okay.
I've never been to that.
All right. So which NBA camp did you go to, or did you go to both?
I went to Portsmouth.
Okay.
Portsmouth, Virginia, and then I went out to Chicago, and I played. I was pretty happy with the way I played in both of those camps. I didn't, I was sort of thinking I might get drafted. I remember meeting. So when I was a senior, this caused quite a stir when I was at Fordham. Willis Reed really took a liking to me.
Big time. Big time.
Willis must have been at 8 of our home games at Fordham, and he would come in the gym, and he knew Willis Reed was there to see me play.
Okay.
And he sat at the media table, and Willis Reed is, you don't get much bigger than that.
Right. And one of the nicest, sweetest men you'll ever meet in your life, right? I mean, that's the other part about Willis. Just this absolute sweetheart of a man.
Yes, Willis is another one. Another guy in my corner. He was just one of those guys. And he had told me that they were looking at me they ended up selecting Judd Bushler. And Judd ended up having a nice NBA career, 3 rings with the Bulls. And Judd was a good player in Arizona, so no hard feelings there. But he did say they were looking at me, maybe a possible second-round pick. And I had heard that in another place because I ended up, my rookie year, I ended up going to the CBA.
All right.
And then
so who ended up taking you? The Nets did in the second round?
Nobody. I ended up going to Nets camp. In my rookie year.
Okay.
And I had a great camp. I couldn't.
And where was that camp at Princeton?
That was at Princeton.
Yeah.
Sam Bowie was on that team.
Right.
Chris Dudley was on that team. Jack Haley was on that team.
Great man, good friend of mine.
And Derek Coleman.
Oh boy.
Had not signed yet.
Okay. Oh boy.
So I was going through the whole camp, and I was playing great. And then they signed Coleman, and they already had Bowie and Dudley, but the thing I felt most ripped off about is they kept an extra point guard. They kept 4 point guards, and I was like, oh, well, I really thought I made that team. Ended up going to the CBA, played in Omaha for a week, and then the Jazz called me up, and I played on the Jazz for the rest of that season. And then that was another one.
All right, so what was that like? What was that like to play for the Utah Jazz? Here's a kid from the Bronx who grew up in Bayonne, and now he's in Salt Lake City, and that must have been like a culture shock, right?
It was so great. It was so great. It was a culture shock, but man, it's gorgeous out there.
Yep.
And those guys, they were so professional. Mark Eaton, Thurl Bailey, John Stockton, Darrell Griffin, Karl Malone. Those guys were just so focused on winning basketball games. So that, guys go up, you have a road game, guys would have dinner and go to bed. That was it.
There was no going out, no nothing, right?
They wanted to win games. Those guys just wanted to win basketball games. And it was such a professional atmosphere. It was a very good Jerry Sloan, he's in the Hall of Fame. It was a great coach. Just kept the game simple. Not too complicated. I really enjoyed my time there because it was just go out and compete, go out and I think of him and there's a couple of other guys. Just keep the game simple, and that's what I needed to do.
Okay.
Just keep the game simple. I don't need to know, that somebody turns over their left shoulder 30% of the time and they go to their right shoulder the other 70%. I don't need to know those numbers. Some coaches get into that kind of detail, and I sit there and I'm like, I just want to play. I just want to go out and play. And Jerry was one of those guys.
All right, now was Gordy Chiesa the assistant coach with the Jazz then too?
Gordy was there.
Yeah. Here's one of the stories I could tell you real quick about Gordy Chiesa, and I don't know whether or not you can relate to it, okay? Gordy Chiesa, if he met you once, you know what he did? He took out an index card and put down on the index card a couple of things about you. Like, say, for instance, he'd take out the index card and say, Danny O'Sullivan, born in the Bronx, Irish background, blah, 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 like those types of things. He'd remember what your birthday was, how important St. Patty's Day was, those types of things, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with, Jimmy Hague, from St. Paul's to Greenville, same parish as Bobby Kilduff, like I coached Bobby Kilduff at St. Thomas Aquinas and blah, 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 blah. Right? Gordy was phenomenal when it came to that. And then he had that photographic memory that he didn't even have to go to that index card to pull that out about you, and he kept it forever. I mean, it's amazing how that kind of memory he had. So anyway, go ahead. So now, what was that like? Was that a good learning experience for you as a basketball player to play at Utah that year?
Oh, that was fantastic. I mean, that was just competition at the highest level. I mean, because they practiced so hard too. So some teams I had been around, some guys didn't practice ever. And so Carl was practicing all the time. Like, there was no day off for those guys. Jerry was tough. He made those guys work. So you had to come ready to play every day like it was a game because that's how it was. We scrimmaged a lot, which was good.
Okay.
Because, I just like to play instead of all these drills, which we did a little bit, but Jerry liked to play. Jerry wanted to see guys running up and down, competing, getting each other's face. And Carl was bringing it every time. Okay.
All right. So now, after the year with the with the Jazz, you then had to bounce around a little bit, didn't you? And
that was that's the story of my life. I played on I was fighting for my life every year for 10 years.
Okay.
So I played on the Jazz. Then the next year, I played in Albany, Georgia, in the GBA, which was trying to rival the CBA.
I don't even know what that is.
It was we played with a white basketball. It was a bad league.
Okay.
It was a bad league. But anyway, they promised us more money. It was like a couple of $100 more a week than the CBA. The CBA was the better league. But somebody says, hey, it was a good group of guys going down to Albany, Georgia. I was like, you know what? Seems like a good team. Seems like I could fit in with these guys. I went down there. Ended up getting traded to Louisville halfway through the year, which was another. It's interesting seeing these other places in the country. Albany, Georgia. I would never spend time there.
Yeah.
Just life wouldn't bring me there. Same with Louisville. I still think back to my couple of months in Louisville. I'm like, well, I love that town.
Yep, great town.
I love Louisville.
Great town.
And even when I was bumping around Shreveport, Louisiana, Rapid City, South Dakota. I love Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay.
I love that place. I mean, you just meet so many generous people. People come to games, and you see them in a restaurant after the game or something, or you're having a drink after the game. People are just so friendly. I remember this husband and wife. They would befriend people on the team, have us over for Sunday dinners because they knew we were just living in a hotel on the strip. So it was just people. You just find out how generous people are. And it was just. I think back to those times people are they're just wonderful.
Okay. All right, so then in between there, you ended up coming back home.
Yes.
And you played for the Jersey City Jammers, right? Didn't you? But they didn't.
Jammers. Yeah,
Right.
The Jersey Jammers. We played down in Brick.
Oh, you played in Brick. I thought there was at Untitled Center.
Well, no, there was. Oh, yeah, you're right. I totally forgot. Yeah, there was the Jersey Jammers out of Stevens. We played at Stevens Tech. Then there was one summer I played down in Brick. I think it was at Brick High School. And that was a very good league. That I don't even know what that was. That was the USBL.
Yep, USBL was the name of that league, right?
Yeah, and that was a good league.
Yeah, well, incredibly. How about this? Because I used to keep score for the games at the Untitled Center because I was the SID at St. Peter's at the time, and the Jersey Jammers, which I thought that was the team that you played for. I'm lost, but the head coaches of the Jersey City Jammers were, in succession, Cassie Russell, Tiny Archibald, Henry Bibby. Now those are three big time names that were the head coaches.
For sure.
Yeah, but
I can't even remember who my coaches were for those Jersey Jammer teams. One in Brick and nice guys. I remember the one, especially the guy at Stevens. Great guys, but those were always very good leagues. You know who came out of there was Anthony Mason. Anthony
Mason got his shot in that league. So did Manute Bowl.
Dominated that league.
Manute Bowl come out of that league. Muggsy Bogues came out of that league. You know, great league. Byron Strickland scored 60-something points in a game in that league. You know, and then the most amazing thing about that league was I was keeping score, and there was a fight between the Jersey City team and I forgot who they played, and it might have been the Albany Patroons. It might have been, and the fight was so bad that there were like players running up into the stands to have a fist fight. So it was, it was bad. But I don't remember whether or not you played for the team then. Probably not, right? If it was not at Untitled Center.
I didn't.
Yeah.
But there were good players. I remember Roy Hartley was in that league.
Yep.
And he was trying to make a comeback.
And so did Sugar Ray Richardson. After the two of them after they had their drug problems, right?
Yeah, Roy Hartley was not in his best form, but he was so good, and I was like, oh my God, here I am trying to make it, and he's on the downside trying to get back, and I'm still like, how am I going to make it in this league? These guys are so good. It's a different level until you're out there and you're drowning. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing out here. Okay. You know, it's incredible.
All right. So then after that summer with the in the USBL, you got a tryout to go to training camp again with the Nets.
Yes.
And that's how I remember, because I remember writing a story about you down in Princeton. Because you were on the verge. As a matter of fact, you made the team, right? Didn't you make
I made that team. I was already out of their summer league. So, I played USBL that summer, and then I went to their summer league, and so Kenny Anderson, it was his second year.
Right.
They wanted him to play summer league. So Kenny played summer league, I played summer league, Kelly Tripucka was on that summer league team.
Wow.
And Kelly was trying to make it because Chuck Daly was the coach.
Right.
And so Chuck might have needed an extra scorer off the bench or, whatever. But
he was done by then. He couldn't run. Right?
Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't.
Yeah,
that guy,
no.
He competed hard.
He competed hard.
Score.
Yeah.
He could still score. The thing about
the next time I see Kelly, I'll ask him. When he was at training camp with the Nets, how done was he? And I'll see how much he left.
Yeah, that and so like Kenny, I had a great camp that summer camp. I had a great camp.
Yep.
But Kenny and Kelly were part of the reason why, because they know the game.
Yep.
Kenny makes playing basketball easy.
Yep.
And so does Kelly, because Kelly sees everything happening before it's going to happen.
It's unbelievable,
and then
right?
You just move to the right place, and all of a sudden you're laying the ball in, and you don't even know why, because Kelly set the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Kenny set the whole thing up. So I had a great camp. I was signed going into that camp. So
you had a guaranteed contract, right? Guaranteed contract.
Guaranteed, yeah. It was guaranteed that year contract, yeah.
Yeah. And again,
that
was Willis Reed and Chuck Daly. Those, not too big.
Willis Reed and Chuck Daly. I made that team. I didn't play a lot. It was a little bit of a dysfunctional team.
Dysfunctional team with Kenny Anderson
it was actually there was a little dysfunction, I should say. Not because it was a good team. Kenny had a great year. Chris Morris had a great year.
Yep.
Then we had Sam was doing great. Sam Bowie.
Right.
DJ Brown was a great addition.
Yep.
But we had Tate George was sort of a tough locker room presence.
Yep.
And so there was like a little bit of that. He wanted more playing time. He wasn't good enough. There were just better players at his position.
Right.
So that was a little, uncomfortable. He didn't make things easy.
Wasn't Derek Coleman on that team though too?
Derek was so good.
Yeah. But he wasn't a good teammate though, right? Was he?
I wouldn't say that he wasn't a good teammate. I don't know how to classify Derek.
Okay.
He was sort of like always. Nothing was ever just right.
Yep.
He just was not a happy person.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. That was that. It was.
He had the world in the palm of his hand, and he just felt. I guess he felt. Always something was wrong.
Yep.
There was always something out of place.
Yep.
He never just get with everybody and everybody on the same page.
And then the joy of my professional life covering the NBA was also on that team, and that was Drazen Petrovic. And what was that like to play with Draz?
Drazen was, you'd show up at the gym. He's already soaked through his T-shirt. He's been working for an hour. And when you're leaving and showered, he's still in the gym. He was just tireless. He was one of the best shooters I ever saw. And guys were coming after him all the time. He was special.
Right.
Is what he was. He was a special player. He worked.
He was a special player. He was a special guy. I look forward to going to APA of all places every single day just so I could talk basketball with Chuck Daly and Drazen Petrovic. I certainly didn't look forward to seeing Coleman and Anderson, but I certainly loved talking to Draz and talking to Chuck. And when we lost Draz, I don't know if I've ever been more upset about losing somebody.
That was a stunning loss.
Yeah.
He was a special person, special player. And he was in his prime. Yep.
He was just on the rise. He was just on the rise. He
really was.
Like 3 or 4 more years, he would have been. I mean, he was already all NBA, but he was just on the rise.
And his shooting in those days, he was shooting 50% from 3-point range.
Right. It was sick.
Incredible.
Sick.
It was. But he worked.
Yep.
It was incredible. He wasn't leaving until he had 500 makes.
Right.
He wasn't leaving the gym.
All right. But then the Nets release you? How did you end up with the Bucks?
I ended up, I forget the details around it. But they cut me. And I forget why. Probably, I wasn't contributing.
Okay.
I wasn't playing that much. Chuck didn't really. So I made that team. Chuck wasn't there that summer. Chuck didn't really have a say in why I was on that team. So, I remember because he was coaching the Dream Team in Barcelona.
Right.
So I think he was probably like, "Who is this guy?" So, because I remember one night we were in Miami. We were short-handed. I think we started the game with 8 players. Guys were sick or whatever, and I was ready to go. I was ready to play. I was always in shape. I was ready to play 40 minutes if needed, and he barely played me that night. And I was like, wow, bit shorthanded, and he still can't find minutes. Chuck really didn't like me, didn't really know me, and never found time for me. So, when I forget why I was cut, they probably brought somebody else in. Ended up in Milwaukee for 2 10-day contracts.
Okay.
And that was an interesting situation, because that's where, when I went to Milwaukee, like, those guys, they did not practice.
At all.
Show up at the gym. Well, like, Frank Bukowski was on that team, and Frank was funny, as nice a person. He'd show up in, like, his socks and sit down and read the paper, and everybody else was, like, running up and down. I couldn't believe it.
Who was the head coach? Who was the head coach then?
Mike Dunleavy.
Oh, well, okay. All right.
And Mike, hey, Mike was a head coach. He was a very good player in his own right.
Yep.
But he was one of those guys. I mean, I couldn't believe the detail we were going into in the pregame scout or the walk. That's when, like, we were playing the Celtics or something, and he's like, McHale turns, to his left shoulder 40%, and the other, and I'm like, what? I can't play like that. I can't be thinking about 40% this way or that way.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is a little nuts for me. And it wasn't a very good team. There were some good guys on that team, though. Danny Shays was on that team.
Okay.
Just, good group. Good. It was a good group of, people, but not a very good team. And so I was there for 2 10 days, and then Moses Malone got healthy, and they put him back on the roster, and they let me go.
Oh wow! Okay.
Which was predictable.
Yeah.
I ended up going to Puerto Rico from there and played that whole summer in Puerto Rico.
Which that must have been fun.
It was a blast.
Yeah.
It was, it was good to get away. It was incredible. The skill, the intensity of the game. That's the great thing about basketball, man. They play everywhere, and they want to win. And it was just a different way. You're driving yourself to your own games,
yep,
road games or whatever. And the guy who made it all worthwhile was Herb Brown was the coach, and that's Larry Brown's brother.
Right.
And Herb was another guy. He was just like, he simplified the game.
Okay.
And he's a genius. In my book, he's a genius.
And you must have related to him because he's a Jersey guy like you. So, yeah, right?
Yeah, he doesn't get the notoriety that he deserves. Because Larry was, a player and the coach, and probably Herb didn't play at such a high level, but Herb knows the game, and he keeps it simple, and I learned a great deal from him, because after I left Puerto Rico, I went to Pistons camp, and I made the Pistons.
Right, the next year.
Right out of there.
Yeah. And incredibly, from that point on, from you signing with the Pistons, were your bags ever unpacked? I mean, you traveled all over the place, from back and forth out of the NBA, overseas, Italy, Greece, the bags must have always had to be packed, right?
Yeah. I never really settled in anywhere, and a lot of it is, I always had a hard time staying healthy enough. That's why I marvel at guys that can play 82 games every year. Like, when you look at all-time great players and that they can play 82 games and, year in and year out, I really did struggle with my health, with little injuries that forced me out, I had surgeries and things like that where, I wasn't built for that kind of rigor,
okay,
to play all the time. I could have stretches. I could have like a week here or there. That's why I was able to make teams, but then to just sustain things, it was such a challenge for me.
Okay. All right. So then, and we will continue with Danny O'Sullivan's career in just 1 second. One more ad to pay the bills a little bit from Stan Sports Center. Stan Sports Center is your local full-service sporting goods store vendor and authorized team dealer. They offer quality products and dozens of brands to outfit your team top to bottom. Stans has been proudly supporting the local community since 1946 and is your one-stop shop for uniforms, equipment, online team stores, and much more. Locations in Hoboken and Saddlebrook and servicing the entire tri-state area. Visit them on the web at stansportsctr.com. That's stansportsctr.com. And check them out on social media for their latest creations at Stan Sports Center, located at 528 Washington Street in Hoboken. Telephone number 201-798-4466. And tell them that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast to get a hold of Stans. All right, so now we left off by you being in Puerto Rico and then getting a chance to play to make the Pistons. Was the following year, correct? And did you get a guaranteed contract from the Pistons, or did you have to make the team in training camp?
I had to make the team. How to make that team again. I had a really good camp. I was able to string together like a whole month of consistent basketball. Brendan Malone was on that staff.
Who was the head coach?
Don Chaney.
Oh, okay.
And it was the downside. It was not the bad boys anymore.
No, they were on the way down. Yes.
Rodman was gone. Vinnie Johnson was gone. Mahorn was gone. John Sally was gone. It was, Isaiah at the tail end, Dumars, and Lambier retired that December. Like 1 month into the season, he
just said he had enough.
Writing on the wall.
Yeah.
It was going to be a bad team. I think we won 20 games or so. And it was it's just tough, when you're losing basketball games, it's just not a fun atmosphere. And again, I got hurt that year too. I just, I tore a little cartilage in my knee. And just, again, I could not just stay healthy enough to give myself a shot to prove myself. So, I always, when I see guys that can play night in and night out, it is I have so much respect for those guys that can do it.
Okay. So now, the next couple of years, you're not in the NBA at all. You're playing, CBA, USBL again, overseas. Was the goal always to try to get back into the NBA, or did you figure you could carve a niche and play pro ball overseas?
It was always to get back. I knew my time was coming to an end as far as NBA was, but I went to Shreveport.
And what league was that?
That was the CBA.
Okay.
And I was determined to just play, and try to stay healthy and take care of myself. And I ended up getting called up at the end of that year to the Toronto Raptors for a 10-day contract, and that was kind of like as those 5 games I played, they were all road games. As kind of like almost insignificant as that little time period was, it just meant a lot to me to just say, all right, I was able to do it, because I really did play some good basketball in for that team in Shreveport in front of nobody.
Okay.
We played in front of 100 people in a 8,000 seat arena.
That must have been horrible. Yeah.
It was really hard. But it was another good group of guys. I was, they were throwing me the ball inside. I was scoring. It was fun anyway. And then from there, I tried to make my way over. It wasn't easy. I went to Spain. Ended up, not sticking with the team. I went to Italy. I tried out for a team in Milan. They liked me, but they didn't feel like I could, make a difference. And then I hooked on with a team in Pesaro for a year. But again, I got hurt. Had back surgery.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I ended up going back to a team in Bologna. And I played in Bologna for 2 years. It was like my longest stint in one city, but I ended up playing on both teams. So it was
right.
like the arch rival. It was almost like playing 1 year for the Mets and the next year for the Yankees.
Okay.
And my first year in Bologna, Dominique Wilkins was on my team, and David Rivers.
Wow.
And that was a great team. We didn't win. We should have won everything. That was a great team. David Rivers was a special special teammate.
Yep.
He was, I had known about him from his high school days, but boy, that guy was a great player.
Yep. And a great guy. Just an absolute great guy. David Rivers is a great,
I really
special.
enjoyed that year with him. And
didn't you play with him again in Greece too?
No, we were probably on opposite sides. I think he had played in Turkey.
Okay.
I ended up finishing in Greece.
Right. I thought you were on the same team with him in Athens. No?
No, he wasn't the year I was there.
Oh, okay.
But he bounced around in Turkey. He had a fantastic. He made a ton of money.
Ton of money in overseas. Yeah. Ton of money.
Yeah, he did really well.
Yeah, and a great guy.
And he was a special player coming out of St. Anthony's.
Without question, he's in my mind, he's one of the top 5 players in the history of Hudson County. So I mean, that's
for sure.
Yeah, great player. All right. So anyway, so you bounced around in Italy. You ended up your pro career in Greece. Did you know at that point then, Danny, it was over? Did you say, or were you still going to try to see if you can get a hook on someplace?
Well, my second year in Bologna, I had gotten married the year before, and then my wife was pregnant.
Oh wow!
She came over to Bologna.
Did you marry a Jersey girl?
She left her job. She's from Syracuse.
Oh, okay.
We met at Fordham.
Oh, okay.
And so we got married. She was pregnant. She came over to Bologna, had the baby in Bologna. And at that point...
So your child is an Italian citizen?
He's not.
Oh.
You have to have Italian blood to be an Italian citizen.
See, I learned something new every day when I do this show. Every day. So, okay.
So after that Bologna year, I was done because we had a baby. We had just bought a home in Maplewood, New Jersey, and I was just like ready to move on with my life. My wife came home from there. She had left. She had been working at ESPN. She came home. She got a job with Discovery Channel.
What was she doing at ESPN?
Sales.
Oh, okay. All right. So now she got a job at the Discovery Channel. So now she's working full time here.
It was where she always wanted to work at Discovery.
Okay.
So she got her job at Discovery, and then we went on vacation. We went on a family vacation down in North Carolina with all her brothers and sisters. It was great. And all of a sudden, my agent called me up. He had been calling me all summer. And he's like, oh, I got this job for you in Spain. I got this and that. And he's telling me the money. And I was like, I'm done. I really can't leave my family. And then at the end of the summer in August, he said, hey, Danny, I just figured I'd call you one more time. There's a team in Athens. It's a lot of money. You got to think about it at least. So I hung up the phone. I said to my wife, I was like, I think we got to go. I said, I think I have to go.
Okay.
And it was a tough year. Sometimes you make those sacrifices. And it was a lot of money. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go grab it one more time. Ended up on a great team. We won a lot of games. It was a fun year professionally. I played really good basketball. But it was a very difficult year personally. And
being away from your wife and your child, sure. Yeah.
It was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came home. I missed my son's first birthday. And I came home, and then I knew. I was like, I can't do that again.
No.
I can't. Even though they wanted me back next year for more money, I just knew I couldn't,
Couldn't do it. Right.
And so it was fine, It was like, and it was probably for the best anyway. Again, I was very lucky to get through that year healthy. Because, and I'm healthy to this day as far as physical ailments and all that. I don't have any bad knees or anything, but I was lucky to get through one more year, and it was the right time to finish.
Okay. All right. So then you decided to come back home, and did you have any idea what you wanted to do or did you say, okay, I'll settle in and do something when I get back home? But did you have any idea?
I always tried to network. So I had gotten to know a bunch of guys on Wall Street, guys that worked on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And when I finished, when I was still playing, these guys would say, hey, when you're done playing, you give me a call, I'll help you out. So that's what I did. I called up a couple of guys. I went down there, interviewed a bit. I got a job on the floor of the exchange with, like small outfits, nobody that you would know. And then I worked down there for a few years. And then I could see it was all going electronic, and my wife's career trajectory at Discovery was going straight up. So we just decided that I would be the stay-at-home parent because we had 2 kids at the time. They were getting to the point where they needed to be driven places and after-school activities, and so it just made sense for me to step away from that life and just stay home and raise the family.
Beautiful. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And now let's mention your family. What's your wife's name, and what are your kids' names?
My wife is Sharon, and we have 3 kids. So Sam goes to Indiana. He's a senior.
Okay.
And Olivia is at NYU. She's a sophomore. And then I have a freshman in high school at Del Barton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're not.
None of them athletes?
They like sports. They're not athletes.
Oh, wow.
Like my son at Indiana, he does a sports radio show. One night a week, talks NBA. Like he knows. He marvels me with his depth of knowledge of the league. Like he would know the 8th man on the Portland Trailblazers.
Okay.
He knows the league because he does all the fantasy sports too.
Okay.
So he knows the league up and down. He's fun to listen to. Same with the NFL. Like he knows these players because of fantasy. And then my 2 younger ones, they're really into musicals, and it's so much fun. So much fun watching them. So no, I would. Sports it's gotten crazy since I played. That's why I say like I came up at the right time because I don't know if I would have been able to do what I did. Nobody would stick with it as long as I did if they didn't have those immediate results.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So, and we didn't mention
let's find something else.
What's your wife's first name?
Sharon.
Okay, and so your wife Sharon and 3 kids, and you live near where now? You live in Summit?
We're in Summit, New Jersey.
Okay, and you've carved a nice little niche. Now, when you walk around Summit and they see somebody who's 6'10" walking around, and people automatically must come up to you and say, "Hey, did you play basketball?" And then
I did it, yeah. I'm happy I did because people ask me every day if I play basketball. They ask me how tall I am.
And do you have to give them the whole career?
No, it's too much of a mishmash. It was a great 10 years. I appreciate everything that basketball has given me. Even those days in Shreveport, Louisiana, they're meaningful. They're memorable. Basketball is just one of those games. It can take you anywhere. You take what you can out of it and try to give back what you can as well.
Were you able to, and this is a question I ask a lot of people that play for several teams, were you able to keep any of your jerseys from the teams that you played in over the years, either in the NBA or overseas?
I have my Greek home jersey, and I have the first year in Bologna, I have that home jersey.
No NBA jerseys.
No. NBA, it's so interesting. They want when you're cut or you're moving on, they want all their stuff back.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what it's like now, but in those days in the 90s, they wanted everything back. Like you don't get to keep anything.
Did they withhold a paycheck before you gave them back the jersey or something?
No, that was it. They'd be like, hey, you got but the uniform they would have anyway.
Okay.
The practice stuff, yeah, they'd ask for it all back, and you're kind of thinking, man, can I get a pair of shorts or something?
Yeah. Something to have as a memory, God.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, looking back now, Danny, how wild of a ride was it for you to go from being afraid to being cut from your freshman team at Bayonne to having a 10-year professional basketball career that also lasted many years in the NBA?
No, it's nuts. There's no way anybody would have picked me out of the lineup of if you watched me in high school and somebody said, hey, somebody's going to play 10 years professionally, I would have been probably like the 10th pick. There would have been 10 guys picked before me. So it's just it's a crazy thing. I'm so blessed. Again, I stuck with it. I had some great people pushing me along the way. But yeah, it's been a great ride. I've loved every minute. I still love the game today. I watched as much as I could out of the NBA bubble games. And the playoffs. I think the NBA is better than it's ever been. With the infusion of all these European players and players from everywhere now, the game's never been better.
Yeah, no, well, and the talent pool definitely showed through the bubble, because you could see why through 82 games, where a lot of players used to, quote, take games off or didn't play as hard or whatever, but in the bubble you got to see some incredible performances, and you get to see why they're the cream of the crop, because there's some just incredible players that are out there. I love watching Luka Doncic play. That's just I think he's the future of basketball. I think he's the guy. Yeah.
And it's like, guys like that were never coming, right? Until like that '92 Dream Team.
Yep. That
changed everything.
Opened the doors.
Players around the world, they knew they had to get better, and they did, and they pushed us. And now our players are getting better. Like the Dirk Nowitzkis of the world, they would have got lost to history.
Yep.
Think about like Sabonis, could have been here his whole life. That guy was. You hear stories about him. That guy was incredible in Europe.
Yep.
Before we got to look at him, and he was playing on the front leg.
Oh, he had no legs, and he was still being able to play.
Right.
Yeah.
So the game's never been better. The game's never been, like you said, Luka Doncic.
Yep.
That guy is off the charts.
Yeah, like nobody else I've ever seen in my life. In terms of all around.
He's so good. He's so big, so strong. Yeah. There's just nothing like him, right? Like you see guys like that, and he's so young.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. And don't forget, he's only 21. So I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. So hey, Danny, this was a great ride. Thank you so very, very much for taking the time to talk to me. It was a little bit of work to get us together, but I'm glad we finally did. And we will definitely keep in touch. And all my best to you and your family. And please say hello to Julie for me. It's been a while since I've seen her. So, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and best of luck to you in the future. And
thanks, Jim. It was my pleasure.
And we will keep in touch. There's no question.
Yeah.
All right, Danny. Thanks so very much. You take care.
Thanks, Jim. Bye-bye.
And that was my special guest, Danny O'Sullivan from Bayonne, who had a great professional career, college career at Fordham, and a professional career with many stops in the NBA. And he had a lot of great stories to tell about all the places that he went to. Thanks so very much for listening to this week's edition of the Hudson County Hudson County Sports Podcast. A special thanks to my executive producer, my great nephew Johnny Haig, who without him, this podcast would never have come off the ground. And again, thank you to my special sponsor, Stan Sports Center in Hoboken. Please stop in 528 Washington Street. Please say hello to my friend Danny DiCagilio and everybody there. Todd Perkins, they're all the boys down. Louie, all the people down at Stan Sports Center. Tell them I said hello, and please tell them that you listen to the Hudson County Sports Podcast as part of that made you want to go down to Stan's and take a visit. Again, thank you so much for listening today. I'm your host, Jim Haig. Have a pleasant afternoon, and please stay safe, everyone. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Hudson County Sports Podcast. Please listen.